Thank you very much for the round of applause. My name's Andy Peart. I look after the marketing for Artificial Solutions. I'd like to thank the organisers for sorting out the weather to make me feel at home, because as you can probably tell from my English accent, I'm used to this sort of cloudy, miserable weather. So, don't worry too much. I'm not going to be talking too long because I realise that this is a technical session, and I will soon be handing over to my technical support, Lucas, to actually show you some of the things that I'm going to be talking about. Just to set the scene though, I wanted to just give you a little bit of background in terms of artificial solutions and introduce this concept of 333 ways to tell a joke. So as some of you may have heard last night in the Aonics Awards, we specialise in a form of artificial intelligence that we refer to as natural language interaction. Basically, it allows people to speak to devices, applications, websites, bots, in fact, a whole range of different channels and platforms in a human-like, intelligent and conversational way, using natural language. And we've chosen to approach this rather thorny technical issue in a slightly different way than the majority of our contemporaries, because what we have done is built a platform. It's a platform that we've referred to as Teneo. Teneo, incidentally, is Latin for to know, to acquire, to attain, so fairly relevant for a knowledge-based conversational system. And it allows non-specialists to rapidly build these complex conversational systems. And once built, you're able to deploy them across multiple channels, as I've already mentioned, but also in multiple languages. Indeed, we support 35 different languages, which is perhaps something that harks back to our European heritage, where the need to be able to speak multiple languages is key. And it's not just European languages, it's complex language sets, double right language sets, such as Chinese, Russian, Japanese, Korean, as well, that we support. And then the final bit of the jigsaw is around analysing this free format conversational data. And that's quite a complex issue in its own right. If you think about a conversation, it ebbs and flows. You need to know the context of what's being said. So I love that. Well, what was I talking about? That natty little pink t-shirt, perhaps. So you need to know what's said before, and then to be able to capture this vast volume of information and bring meaning to it. And that's exactly what we do with the Teneo Analytics Suite. It's like having a focus group at your fingertips, but not a focus group of 20 people, a focus group of 1 million people, 24/7, 365 days a year. And that's perhaps why a number of our clients are working with us. We focus very much in the enterprise space. So just to give you a flavour of the sort of organisations with whom we're working, it's the likes of Vodafone, Telenor, Orange, in the petrochemical space, people like Shell, in the airline, people like TAP, which is a Portuguese airline, a wide range of enterprises. And we're also working with a number of Asian and US electronics manufacturers where we're building conversational UIs to support their product set. So that's a little bit about the company and setting the scene. But it kind of begs the question, why should you as enterprises care about any of this? Well, because as we all know, consumer expectations are changing, and they're changing fast. We, as users, are now increasingly expecting to be able to speak to devices, and for those devices to understand them. We have a golden opportunity in our grasp to actually change a paradigm that's been with IT since, I guess really since IT first started. And that's to make technology that understands us, rather than us having to understand how to use the features and functions of technology. So, why should enterprises care? Well, because your customers care about it. Your customers are going to want to start to talk to you through automated channels, channels of their choice, and you need to be able to respond to that, and they want to be able to use natural language in terms of how you address them. So, why is it so difficult to build these natural language type of solutions? Well, because language is pretty complex itself. Look, think of one of the easiest words in the English language, yes. Think of all of the different ways, the different synonyms that you can use to say yes. The English Oxford Dictionary counts 55 different ways. Yeah, righto, 10-4, you bet, affirmative, positive, it goes on. So, just looking at it from a very, very simplistic level, it starts to get quite complex. But as we all know, to be able to give a sensible answer, you first need to understand the question. And questions are very rarely asked as a single word. I guess unless that's the lovely Mrs. Peart when I've walked in a little bit late and it's, well, usually it's a sentence or a whole conversation. Now, book a meeting. When do you want that meeting booked? Tomorrow. Who with? Where do you want it? What time? It's a conversation, it's an interaction, and that's why conversational systems are so important. So, let's get down to the theme of this presentation, and telling jokes. Let's just think about all the different ways that you can ask to tell a joke. Well, look at the word joke to start with. Again, there are multiple synonyms around joke. You know, a gag, a pun, a funny story, the list goes on. But, as we've already said, it's usually asked as a sentence. Tell me a joke. I'd like to hear a joke. I wish to hear something funny. You can then start to think about sentiment and how I might be feeling. I'm feeling a little bit down. I'm feeling a little bit nervous standing here in my pink shirt in front of you all. I know, let's make you feel a little bit better. Let's tell a joke. In fact, there's probably around 300 different ways to tell a joke. So, how are you going to go off and build a system, say, that tells a joke? Well, you could throw an army of developers at it. Think of all of the different ways, all the different questions that you've got, and you could code up every single way. You know, you look at what Apple did with Siri. They spent 240 million on Siri and have a whole tranche of developers now further developing the Siri application. You know, that's fine if you're a tech giant and you have that sort of resource at your fingertips. But what about if you're an enterprise? It's unlikely that you're going to have those sorts of resources. So, there's another approach, and it kind of harks to what we're talking about in this whole conference around AI and machine learning. And that's exactly the approach that we have taken. Because we've been around over a decade, and in that time we have captured billions of conversations of human to machine interactions in multiple languages. And we've used machine learning to be able to analyze those conversations and build associations between the different words and different concepts. And this is an association graph of one of the languages that we support. I'm afraid it's not very clear. You can actually, believe it or not, zoom right down into this and see the individual words and concepts. It's really just there to show you the degree of complexity that is in place in the Teneo platform. And this is just one element that we use to then very rapidly build these natural language applications. It's an element of a platform that allows you to build, to analyze, and then deploy these all sorts of different multiple applications that kind of fall into two broad categories, to be honest. They either fall into conversational UIs that organizations are using to provide differentiation, to address new markets, or they tend to fall into intelligent virtual assistants, digital agents, intelligent bots. I was at a conference just over a week ago talking about metabots. And these tend to focus on customer service and online sales. So these are the two broad areas that we tend to work with our clients in with the Teneo platform. And then, as I've already alluded to, we can analyze this conversational data and bring meaning to it. But that's probably enough from me, standing here marketing, talking in a pink shirt. I'm sure you actually would like to see something. And the challenge is, it's great for us as marketers to stand up here and say all of this sort of, isn't it easy to do all of this? And either you're very positive and you believe everything that I say, of course I'm sure that is the case, or you may be a little bit more cynical and you actually want to see it. And what we'd like to do, hopefully unlike many people today, we'd like to actually show you. For that, let me hand over to Lucas.
Hello everybody, I think you can all hear me okay. Yeah, thanks Andy. So the task is up to me to actually prove what Andy is saying. To do that, let me see, because I think the screen is a bit blurry here. Let me see if I can close this down and restart it because this doesn't look at all the way it should look. Here we go. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can really see what's on the screen here. This is streaming something that I have on this device. What I'd like to show you is we have a solution here where users can ask about movies. So they can ask all kinds of questions about movies. I'd like to first show you a little bit, some questions that can be asked. And then I'd like to show you how you actually, with our system, with the Teneo platform, can extend the knowledge of this solution so that it actually knows a little bit more than what I show you here. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't really see what's on the screen. It's a bit too blurry, so I'll explain what's going on, but I'll give it a try anyway. So let's see if it's all working. Hello?
Hello from the other side.
Okay, so it is working, you can hear what it's saying. So let me just ask a question about movies. Tell me about the movie Skyfall.
In Skyfall, James Bond must defend his boss M after MI6 is attacked and disgraced by a mysterious villain named Silver.
So I asked a question about the movie Skyfall. What the system actually did, it understood, okay, this is the title of the movie Skyfall. It went out to an external service, from Rovi if you're interested, who gives us the information, a quick summary of the movie Skyfall, and also an image, a poster image of the movie Skyfall. So, okay, I've asked my first question, I got my response. Let's see if I can ask a little bit more. Who is the lead actor?
The lead for Skyfall was Daniel Craig, who plays the role of James Bond.
What else has he been in?
The actor Daniel Craig has been in Spectre, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Quantum of Solace.
So you see that I'm first talking about the movie Skyfall, then I'm asking who was the lead actor, and the system should still understand that we're still talking about the movie Skyfall without actually me explicitly saying that. And then I asked, okay, once we're talking about Daniel Craig, okay, what else has he been in? And then it gives me a list of the movies that he was been in. So that's all nice. So we can ask about the movie, and remember some context, and I can ask follow-up questions. Now let's ask a question of which I know that it won't support. Hold on. Did he win an Oscar?
I don't think I got that.
So I'm asking, did he win an Oscar? And that's actually something that's not supported by this assistant. So that's not in here, and we actually want to have a way to answer that question. So let's see if we can add that now. Well, for that we will use Teneo Studio, which is part of the whole platform that Artificial Solutions delivers. So we deliver a development platform in which you can implement the knowledge. You can deliver it to an engine, and there's also an analytics component. And we are going to focus on the development for now. So this is Teneo Studio, where we actually extend the knowledge of the system. And what we're seeing here is the beginning of what we call a flow. And this flow will take care of the question about Oscars. So at the top we see a shoot match, and at the bottom we see an answer. So the top is sort of like the trigger of the input, and the bottom will contain the answer, whether or not an actor won an Oscar. So let's see if we can train this system to understand questions about Oscars. So what I do is I selected the trigger, and on the right we see that I can provide example inputs. So what questions would people be asking if they were asking about Oscars? So let's add 3 example inputs here. The first example is, which movie did Leonardo DiCaprio win an Oscar for? So that's the first example input that we're adding. Let's add another one. Has Jamie Foxx won an Academy Award? Same sort of question, slightly different phrasing. And let's add a third example. Did Leonardo DiCaprio score an Oscar? So three types of questions, or the same questions basically, slightly worded differently. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit this button, and this button says Train NLU. And what's actually happening in the background now is that our system is analyzing the 3 example inputs that I've added, looking for common patterns in that huge library that Andy showed you, the slide with all the purple dots, looking for patterns that it recognizes, words, synonyms, those kind of things. What it also does, it looks for the names of the actors, and it will store those names in a context. so that we can refer to them later in the conversation, that it will remember that we're talking about a certain actor. So Leonardo DiCaprio and Jamie Foxx, etc., those are the actors' names. Those will be stored as a context in the system. Okay, so I've added the example inputs, I've trained it, and now it will understand if the user asks about a question. But we still haven't given the response. We still don't know whether any of these actors won an Oscar. So we're going to use an integration for that. We're going to call an external service to get that information, to find out if one of these actors actually won an Oscar. Now, as you can see at the top right here, there are 3 integrations that have been set up for this solution. One is to get trailers from YouTube. Another one is with Fandango, where you can reserve movie tickets. And the last one, or the middle one in this case, is with Rovi, that we've used earlier to get the movie information from. And we're going to use that same integration to find out if one of these actors has won an Oscar. So I'm going to click this button, which adds the integration to this flow. And now I need to say, okay, what we actually want is we want to get actor info, and we need to pass on some information to the integration, and we will get back some information from the integration. Now, as I said earlier, in the example inputs, when I trained it, it will store the name of the actor in a context. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that context and pass it on to this integration. So we're now passing on the actor name to the integration. That will then go out to find out if that actor won an Oscar, and it will return us some information like a description about the actor, etc., but also whether or not the actor won an Oscar. So we're going to store that as well in a context. So now we've sent the information, the actor name to the integration, we got back whether or not the actor won an Oscar. Now I need to connect the dots. I'm going to set this as the start node so that the trigger goes to the integration, and we need to make sure that we actually give an answer. Tell the user if the actor won an Oscar. So I'm going to draw a line from the integration to the output, and in this case, we only want to give the answer that we're going to be giving here if we actually know that this actor won an Oscar, because there are 2 outcomes. An actor either won an Oscar or he didn't. In this case, we want to give the answer if the actor won an Oscar. So let's see if we can add the answer. That would be this. So we're adding the answer, actor name, won an Oscar for, and then the names, list of Oscars. And actor name and Oscars will be replaced with the values that we've picked up from the conversation. Okay, so now we've taken care of the situation if an actor won an Oscar. Let's see if we can add an output in case an actor didn't win an Oscar. So it first evaluates, did the actor win an Oscar, and if it doesn't, it assumes that it didn't win an Oscar, so it will give this answer. Let's add this output. As far as I know, actor name never won an Oscar. Great, so we've set up our flow. This is the beginning of this flow, and I think it will work nicely. So I'm going to save this. So it's now saving this flow in the system. And before I actually publish it to our engine in the cloud, I actually want to try if it's really working. So let's first try it in tryout here in Teneo Studio. Let's first try it with one of the example inputs that I entered. So, which movie did Leonardo DiCaprio win an Oscar for? I'm sending that input, and what we see is that we get the response back. Leonardo DiCaprio won an Oscar for The Reverend. He recently won that, and was very happy about it. So, great, we've got an input and we have an answer as well. But let's see if it also supports a slightly different variation of that same question. So let's see, what happens if we ask, has Tom Cruise ever received that little gold guy? And then we see, okay, as far as I know, Tom Cruise never won an Oscar. So it understood the question, it went out to the service, found out that Tom Cruise didn't win an Oscar. This was not one of the example inputs that I added, but the system, because it analyzed all the input, knows that Tom Cruise is an actor, and it also knows what type of question I am asking. So, that's nice. We've got the first flow, we've got it implemented, and it's working. But now we would actually also like to extend this a little bit by adding the possibility to ask a follow-up question. Suppose if the user is asking, okay, did Leonardo DiCaprio win an Oscar? The system gives an answer, and then the user says something else, like, and what about Kate Winslet, or something like that. A follow-up question about different actors. Let's see if we can add a follow-up for that as well. So we're still in the same flow, but this time we're going to add a different trigger, a new trigger that takes care of different set of example inputs. So we're going to add 2 examples in here, and these are the follow-up questions that people might be asking. So they are already talking about the Oscars, and they're asking a follow-up question. Let's see, what shall we add? First follow-up question is, how about Leonardo DiCaprio? That's something that someone might say. And let's add another follow-up question. And what about Jamie Foxx? So 2 follow-up questions, same principle, we're providing example inputs. Only this time we want to make sure that this trigger will only trigger if the context of the conversation is about Oscars and not about something else, because then we might be triggering something wrong. So in this case, we want to make sure that the active topic of the conversation is Oscars. So I'm adding that here. And I'm again going to say train NLU. So it will analyze the example inputs, it will take the context into account, and now we've created a new trigger. Let's add one more follow-up example, and that is if people are already talking about an Oscar, about an actor, and asking a different type of follow-up question. So let's see if we can add this one. Hold on, give me a sec. Did he win an Oscar? So someone is talking about an actor already, and then wants to know if that person won an Oscar. Second example is input is going to be, did she win an Academy Award? Something like that. And in this case, we want to make sure that we're talking about an actor, because the user is referring to another actor. So let's hit train NLU again, training the system. That has been done as well. So now we have added 3 different type of triggers to this. 3 different type of triggers to this system. The first one is the normal question: did a certain actor win an Oscar? The second 2 are follow-up questions where the context is taken into account. I'm going to save this flow, and I'm going to try it out again. So let's say we're going to first ask, which movie did Clint Eastwood win an Oscar for? Clint Eastwood won an Oscar for $1 Million Baby and Unforgiven. That was one of the examples that we saw earlier already, but let's ask a follow-up question. What about Sly Stallone? As far as I know, Sylvester Stallone never won an Oscar. So this is the follow-up question. I'm asking a follow-up. Nice touch here is that you also see that Sly Stallone is actually normalized to Sylvester Stallone. So the system knows that Sly Stallone is the same, and it normalizes that to his full name. Let's try the other follow-up again as well. So I'm going to ask about a movie first, for example. Tell me about the movie Finding Dory. In Finding Dory, amnesia, glue, tang, blah, blah, blah. I get a whole description out about the movie Finding Dory. I'm going to ask the same question that I showed you in the demo. Who was the lead? The lead for Finding Dory was Ellen DeGeneres, who plays the role of Dory. And I'm going to now ask the follow-up question, did she win an Oscar? So let's give that a try as well. As far as I know, Ellen DeGeneres never won an Oscar. So all kinds of follow-up, all kinds of different ways I can approach this Oscar question now, and it will still give me the right answer at the right moment. Super cool. Let's see if we can publish this and can try it on the device. So I'm going to this area, and I'm going to actually say publish this to our QA server, or our engine server. So it's now collecting all the information in the new flow that I've added. It's packaging it up, and it sends it to our server that's running in the cloud. And then I can, once it's published and once it's available, I can actually test it on my device as well. I can play around with it on my device. So it's currently updating the knowledge on the QA server. Let's give it a second. That's done, so the publish is done. Let's go back to this system. Oh, it's very blurry. I'm going to, don't think I have enough time to actually restart my system. Oh, let's give it a try. Hold on, give me a sec. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Tell me about the movie Inside Out.
In Inside Out, emotions run wild in the mind of a little girl who is uprooted from her peaceful life in the Midwest and forced to move to San Francisco.
Who was the lead actress?
The lead for Inside Out was Amy Poehler, who plays the role of Joy.
Did she win an Oscar?
As far as I know, Amy Poehler never won an Oscar.
What about Jamie Foxx?
Jamie Foxx won an Oscar for Ray.
So there you see, I've published this. It's available on this device and I can immediately test it. The one other thing that we also did is we hooked up the same solution to a messenger platform called Slack. I think we're here in San Francisco, everyone knows Slack, I think. So let's see if we quickly can give that a try as well. So I've got a channel here called Movies. There's a bot called MoviePal, which is part of this channel. And let's see if I can ask one of those questions again. So tell me about the movie The Dressmaker. MoviePal is typing, and what we're seeing here is, this is what I found about The Dressmaker, and it gives me a short summary of the movie The Dressmaker, and we also get to see a poster of this movie. Who is the lead? The lead for The Dressmaker was Kate Winslet, who plays the role of Murphy Dunnage. Did she win an Oscar? No, sorry. Kate Winslet won an Oscar for The Reader. So here we have it. I've created a quick new flow to this, added a quick new flow to our solution, tested it in tryout in Interneo Studio, then published it to our server, and I could immediately see the results on my device and in the Slack bot as well. Thank you very much. Andy, over to you. Or, still on.
So, thank you very much, Lucas. I just want to stress that was a live demo. It wasn't canned. It was actually working in front of your eyes. I know how demos can sometimes work as well, so I wanted to make that point. I did have a quick summary slide, but I think we're just about out of time in actual fact. I just wanted to leave you with one thought. We believe that natural language technology is going to become mission critical. We believe that by 2020, enterprises will consider natural language technology as critical as they perceive the internet today. It's something that's going to impact on all of us, and you as enterprises will need to think about it and take it into your strategy and see how you can embrace it. So thank you very much for your time. I think we're about bang on. Thank you for your attention.
We actually have a bit of time for some questions, so does anybody have questions?
I will repeat the question. Okay. So, summarising the question is, why do we need a follow-up bit of coding created? Lucas.
Thank you very much, yeah. The reason for doing it like this is we want to make sure that the correct context is going to the correct flow in this example. So there might be, this solution might contain many other flows and many other subjects, and we want to make sure that it actually go into the same and correct flow. So that's why we're trying to remember the context and attach it to a specific set of inputs in this example.
Actually, I have a follow-up question on that. So you talked about the library of conversations that you have between humans and machines to date. Wouldn't you be able to pull information from past conversations about the flow to incorporate in your model so that you would have predictions on what the next question would be? I think that links to the question of Sir over there. Is this like the next step for you? Or?
So what our platform consists of is a whole set of, or three modules, and one of the modules is also an analytics module. And what we actually can do, I'm not sure if this is what you're referring to, but the knowledge base into the solution can query data that's coming from the analytics module with past conversations from the user, and use that information to steer the dialogue in another way, in another direction. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you meant, but yeah, so those are the developments we're working on as well.